Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I was out grocery shopping this morning. Nothing unusual, just my usual weekend run to stock up on a few things. Everything was going smoothly until I got to the checkout. After paying, I started loading everything back into my cart, and that's when I had one of those clumsy moments. My 12-pack of seltzer water slipped out of my hands and hit the floor. The cardboard tore open along one side, and 2 cans rolled out across the tile. Luckily, it wasn't as dramatic as it could have been. Neither can burst open or sprayed everywhere. They just clinked a little as they rolled, so I picked them up quickly, embarrassed, and tucked them back into the cart along with the ripped case. I thought no harm done. The box was torn but still good enough to carry, and I was just glad nothing had exploded in front of a line of strangers. Fast forward to when I got home. I carried all my bags inside, set everything down, and started putting things away. When I got to the seltzer, I noticed something strange. The box was still open and ragged from the drop, but when I counted, it wasn't missing 2 cans like I expected. It was only missing 1. Somehow, one of those runaway cans had made it back into the box, but not the other. And here's the weird part. Both of the loose cans had been too bent out of shape to squeeze back into the cardboard slots at the store. I remember specifically that they didn't fit, so I had just rested them on top of the open case in the cart. So how did one can end up back inside, perfectly snug like it had never fallen out, while the other completely vanished? I checked the trunk of my car, the back seat, even the sidewalk leading up to my house. Nothing. I'm down a single can, no trace of it anywhere. It's not the freakiest story compared to some of the things people post here, but it definitely left me scratching my head. I still can't figure out how I lost exactly 1 can without noticing, especially after making sure I had grabbed both. Just a small, everyday mystery, but one that stuck with me. Story 2. I just posted this as a comment in another thread, but honestly the more I think about it, the more I feel like it deserves its own post, if only so I can keep some kind of record of these little anomalies when they happen. My name's Lotto, and here's what went down. I run multiple online stores selling clothes. Nothing fancy, just the grind of listing, cross-posting, and keeping everything organized across platforms. The 3 big ones I'm on are eBay, Depop, and Vint. I'm not plugging my stores here, so I won't even mention the names or handles. This is just about something weird that happened during my nightly routine. Every evening, after the normal part of my day is done, I settle in to manage my shops. It's my quiet time. I usually grab a drink, sit down in front of my TV, and queue up an interesting interview or podcast to listen to while I work. It's a system I've built over time. Selling on multiple platforms means constant maintenance. If you list a shirt on 4 platforms and it sells on one, you have to immediately remove it from the others. Same goes for sending out offers, updating stock, or accepting offers. It's all simple stuff individually, but together it's a lot of little steps that need focus. Last night was no different. I opened up my dashboards, started checking my notifications, and got into my rhythm. While I worked, I had an interview playing on my TV, one I'd been looking forward to all day. As usual, I started by clearing out what sold between the 3 platforms, removing those listings from the other 2. Then I moved on to sending offers, and I distinctly remember accepting an offer on a children's Carhartt coat. I even typed out a quick thank you message to the buyer. Everything felt normal, just my usual end-of-day hustle. I got a ton done, checking sales, adjusting prices, prepping tomorrow's shipments, even planning out the next day's listings. It felt like 45 minutes or maybe an hour passed. Not super long, but not short either. Here's where it got weird. When I finally looked up at the screen to see how far into the interview I was, because that's my little way of checking how long I've been working, it said I'd only been watching for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. There's absolutely no way I was able to accomplish all that in 3 minutes. The interview itself was a solid 90-minute video, no loop, no trick, no editing. It was just playing straight through, and I was sitting right in front of it the whole time. It gets stranger. That offer I had accepted on the children's coat? It was still active, like I'd never accepted it at all. But I remember accepting it. I remember writing and sending that thank you message to the buyer's username. Meanwhile, all the other offers I sent out during that time dilation period went through as normal. One of those offers even sold during that window. I'm extremely confused. I'm not someone who jumps to paranormal conclusions. I'm naturally skeptical and pretty scientifically minded. But I can't explain how so much work got done in a time frame that, according to the only clock I had, the interview, barely existed. And I can't explain how an accepted offer reverted to being active while all the other actions I took stayed real. Story 3. My cat had a favorite ball. She'd play fetch, but only with that ball. It was always getting under things in the house and being almost lost. One day it got really lost, couldn't find it in any of the usual stuck places, even thought the dog ate it. Never found it. 3 years later, shopping in my Aldi, walking down an aisle, the ball is on the floor, middle of the aisle, dirty, matted, but the ball. I took it home, washed it, and she went right back to playing fetch like it never left. Until one day she was playing with it, and then it went somewhere, but we can't find it again. I'm still hoping it comes back again. She won't play fetch with any replacement. Story 4. A very small glitch for you. So I went on a little vint shopping spree for my daughter, and had a few packages arrive, but one I had to have delivered to a local shop due to extortionate shipping fees. Packages were arriving over the course of a few days. I wasn't really keeping track via the app, just opening what arrived. A pack of 5 cycling shorts I ordered arrived, and I partially opened them up and saw what they were and put them to one side to take upstairs later. Told my partner about them later to let him know as my daughter was low on shorts. Later when I was changing my daughter, I realized I needed the new shorts and went to grab them but couldn't find them. Over the next few days I couldn't find them anywhere, which was really annoying as it was really hot and my daughter was low on shorts, but knew they would turn up somewhere. Eventually considered that maybe they'd been thrown away as the packaging of the plastic bag made them kind of look like rubbish. Then I realized the one that got sent to the shop is there waiting to be picked up and is going to be sent back soon if I don't collect. I see that it's a bundle item of some cute little rompers and the cycling shorts. I think that's weird and wonder if the shorts were sent separately and ended up at mine. But that doesn't make any sense because how would they get my address as the label is pre-made? I go to collect the parcel, which is fortunately still there, and the rompers and the shorts are there together. Story 5. There is a street in my city that completely glitches people. They go in loops, like glitching game characters. For example, I see a woman going left. 10 minutes later, she's going left again. And it's like that with at least 4 people, just going in loops over and over again. Some people walk normally, but those for looping. There are shops on the street. Sometimes the loop includes said shops. And yes, they enter the shops over and over again, never coming out with something they didn't hold before. Just the same routine, go right, enter the bakery, get out of the bakery, keep going right, 10 minutes later, same thing. They even make the same movements. If she touched her hair after leaving the pharmacy, she will do it in her loop. It's unnerving. It doesn't make sense. I can record it someday if you guys are interested. Update, I tried recording it. But when I came there today, most of the stores on the street were gone, replaced with different ones. Small differences. The fence near a building was blue instead of green. The cracks in the buildings were in different places. The bench I liked to sit and draw on was gone. I feel like I'm going mad. I went on a walk with my mother to make sure I'm not the only one who's seeing this. And she saw it too, was confused just like me. The looping stopped. I don't know what I did. Maybe it's not even because of me, probably not. But I have no idea what happened. I went to one of the new stores, a boutique where previously stood the confectionery. I asked the woman working there when did they move here. She answered, 3 days ago. It's a great location, isn't it? Yeah, it's unusually quick to move a store, right? Well, for this location the building was a very good price. Oh well, I'm happy for you, have a nice day. I walked out of there not even waiting for her response. I must have looked like a lunatic. The woman was completely normal, no uncanny valley feeling, just a normal woman about my age. I don't know what to think about this. My grandmother is friends with a woman who previously owned a pharmacy there. I asked her why she moved out. My grandmother said her husband died and she moved to be closer to her kids and grandchildren. Plus, she always said the building gave her the creeps. She even asked a priest to bless it. Oh, that's all I could say. Oh, the street as it was before is gone, formed my perspective almost overnight. Why did everyone moved out at the same time? Why did they seemingly renovate the fence, removed or moved the park benches? How did the cracks on the old buildings move? What the fuck is happening? Like I said, I don't know what to think about this. I wish I could investigate more, but I don't even know where to start. Who do I ask and about what? Do you guys have some ideas? Story 6. One time when I was staying in a hotel, something happened that still makes me pause when I think about it. I travel fairly often, and I'm pretty used to the way hotels operate, the routines of housekeeping, the way amenities are set out, the feel of the rooms. Nothing usually surprises me. But this particular trip stands out. It was late afternoon, and I'd decided to run myself a bath. The bathroom was one of those simple but neat hotel bathrooms. Clean white tiles, bright lighting, and a small countertop with the usual travel-sized amenities sitting on the sink. You know the kind: shampoo, conditioner, soap, lotion, all lined up neatly, as if someone measured the angles before setting them down. Housekeeping had clearly just been there earlier that day, because everything was in that freshly arranged position. I walked in, started the water, and let the tub begin to fill. While it ran, I leaned against the sink scrolling on my phone, not really paying attention to much else. I specifically remember glancing at the amenities for no real reason. Just a habit, I guess. The little bottle of lotion caught my eye. It was front-facing, the label looking up at me, perfectly aligned. I hadn't used it yet, hadn't touched any of the items at all. A couple minutes later, I looked up from my phone again, and immediately froze. Something was off. The lotion bottle, which had been facing me perfectly straight when I first walked in, was now turned completely around, back facing me. Not tipped over. Not crooked. Not like it had been nudged by a gust of air or a vibration from the pipes. It was perfectly turned around, as if an invisible hand had rotated it exactly 180 degrees. I hadn't touched it. Nobody else was in the room. I was staying there alone. And yet, there it was, back facing me like it had never been front facing at all. I remember frowning, trying to figure out a reasonable explanation. Maybe I'd misremembered how it was sitting. Maybe it had always been that way. But no, I was sure. I had looked right at it earlier. It was front facing. So, a little unsettled but curious, I reached out and turned the bottle back around. Front facing again, label at me, just as it had been before. I went back to scrolling on my phone, trying to ignore the odd feeling creeping up the back of my neck. The water was still running, the room warm and steamy now, and everything was quiet except for the soft rush of water filling the tub. A couple minutes later, I looked up again. My bath was almost ready, but now the lotion bottle had moved again. This time, it wasn't back-facing, it was perfectly sideways. Not angled, not partially turned. Perfectly, cleanly sideways. I hadn't touched it since turning it back. There were no vibrations from footsteps or doors slamming. No one had come in. I had been standing right there the whole time, watching the tub fill. And yet somehow, within just a couple minutes, it had turned again on its own. This time, I didn't move it back. I just stood there staring at it for a moment, feeling weirdly unsettled, but also weirdly calm. It wasn't like a horror movie moment with flickering lights or shadows, just a tiny, ordinary object doing something it absolutely shouldn't have been able to do. I left it as it was and got into my bath, trying not to think about it too much. The warm water helped. When I got out and glanced at the sink again, the lotion was still sideways. It hadn't moved while I was in the tub. And over the next few days, during the rest of my stay in that hotel room, it stayed exactly where it was, sideways, untouched, never shifting again. It wasn't like I was scared, more like baffled. How could a small bottle of lotion, set on a flat countertop, turn itself perfectly around not once but twice? There were no fans, no drafts. I was right there. I hadn't heard it move or seen it slide. One moment it was front-facing. The next back-facing. The next sideways. I still don't know what to make of it. Maybe there's some logical explanation I just can't think of. Maybe my memory's playing tricks on me. But I know what I saw, and I know I hadn't touched it except that one time. It was such a small, mundane thing, but it's one of the strangest experiences I've ever had in a hotel. Story 7. Incident 1. I was running at about 5 a.m. in London. I finished my jog at about 5:30 and walked up the street my flat was on. The street is full of old Victorian houses, about 4 floors high. For some reason I felt like I was being watched and looked up to the 3rd floor of this particular house. There was a young boy with a flat cap on, shirt, suit jacket and trousers stood on the windowsill looking at me. Next to him was a young girl in a flowery dress, bonnet, and ankle boots. I thought, what the hell are 2 young kids, around 7 or 8 years old, doing stood on a windowsill at this time in the morning, and why the hell are they dressed in those old-fashioned clothes? I looked at the children for a few seconds, and they looked at me. I looked for someone else to show them to and have a chat about how weird they looked, but it was too early, only me on the road. So I continued walking, then I stopped and thought, no way. No way. The penny dropped that these may second be ghosts. I froze and went back and they were gone. Incident 2. I awoke in bed and was staring out of the window and kind of relaxed. Then it occurred to me that my breathing, when I breathed out was a little louder than I expected. So I breathed in and breathed out and thought, it sounds louder than it should. Then I breathed in and held my breath, prior to breathing out. The glitch was I heard an out breath. It was like someone was behind me spooning me and breathing in sync with my breathing. I froze and heard the breathing continue. Then I gasped and looked behind me. The breathing stopped and there was nothing there. I live on my own and still can't explain it. Incident 3. I was in the office working as a recruitment consultant, and I was on the phone making some calls. All of a sudden I realized I was not breathing, no in-breath or out-breath. I sat there for a few seconds thinking, man, this is weird, I don't have to breathe. I asked my friends if they felt any funny sensations, and they said, no, I just sat there with no need to breathe for about 20 seconds. It was really strange. Like breathing was not required. No gasping, no inhalation, nor exhalation, nor desire to breathe. It is hard to explain. You may say, how could you talk to your friends without breathing out? All I can say is, I did. To try and grasp what it was like, try and inhale or exhale with your hand. You will say, the hand doesn't do the breathing, so it's a stupid analogy, and I will say that's what it was like. Breathing was just non-existent. For about a minute, it is not like I wanted to and couldn't breathe. More like breathing was just not part of my reality for that period. Incident 4. I was playing football with my friends. I was running fast in a forward direction and tripped over a tuft of grass. I threw my hands out in front of my face and fell flat towards the floor. I was about an inch or two above hitting the ground, and then all of a sudden it felt like I was on a cushion of air, and I spun round 180 degrees and was facing in the opposite direction. I did not hit the floor at all, just swished from a flat post ion near the floor to being stood facing the opposite way. My friend came up and said, what the hell just happened? I said I don't know, but it felt like I was floating on a cushion of air, and we both just puzzled about it for a while. Story 8. Well, I'm not sure entirely, but coincidences happen so much in life that I start doubting reality. This has been happening a lot lately, and for some reason I'm not able to explain it. It happens almost every 3 months. How it goes is when I require some sort of information about something in the near future, day after tomorrow in a week. To understand a fact that uses the said information, I'm presented with the information in the present, usually through the internet, but I also gain the said information from TV or books or some other source, a person maybe, without me actively looking for it. Coincidence, right? Yeah, I don't see any other reason why this should happen. I'll try to explain it, but it's a strange feeling that I'm not sure I can describe completely. So, for example, let's say I need information on what Murphy's Law is in 4 days. Why do I need it? I would eventually realize that I needed information on what Murphy's Law is to understand a part of a book that I'll read in 4 days that explains certain events happening in that book by using Murphy's Law. So from what I said earlier, I would randomly come across an article on the internet telling me what Murphy's Law is today. It would happen without me actively searching for it, just randomly. I used to disregard this as coincidence, but as many as 5 such extremely similar occurrences have happened to me in the past months, the latest being 6 days ago. This seems much like a fantasy, but I swear it is not. I'm so confused by these happenings myself. Sometimes I doubt my sanity. Story 9. I don't know if this qualifies or just something people forgot about. In junior high, a few people were called from classes and told to go to the library. I recognized a few kids from my classes. It seemed they were good students and jocks mostly. First at one table was asked some questions. One I remember was if you could meet any historical figure from the past, who would it be? I think I said Jesus because I wanted to know how much of it was real. It was a couple of adults in more suits and business type where than it seemed teacher types. I wanted to know what was going on, but I figured they would tell us at some point. I was then told to go into one of the private study rooms. I remember it had a big glass window going across the top. There was another questioner in there and more questions. One that I remember is that you are in a room with an alien life form, but are separated by a wall of glass. How would you communicate with the alien? Maybe that is why I remember the glass window so vividly, because of the question referred to glass. I said something. My memory is vague, maybe about making marks to represent 1, and then 2/ marks for 2, and trying to make symbols for other things to try to find a way to communicate. Story 11. It was either a glitch in the matrix, or a slit in the space-time continuum of the kind Philip Pullman writes about in his Dark Materials series, Golden Compass. Perhaps the United Kingdom is full of those things. Beware, ye pedestrians. I was visiting a friend in Scotland. I was already a little off psychologically after taking a bus ride across Ireland with a super interesting young Irish nationalist who was explaining the motivations of the IRA in a way that was, let's say, beyond mere intellectual sympathy. Then a red-eye flight on Ryanair, plastic seats on a plane, to a tiny regional Scottish airport in the middle of nowhere before paying $10 for a coffee at Starbucks and $24 for a pack of smokes. I finally got a train into Glasgow. From the train station, my hostel was about half a mile north, far up on a steep hill. My friend's place was a few hundred yards south of the same train station. One night we went out in the city. We flirted with beautiful Scottish women, that accent. Drank screwdrivers for some reason, maybe there was a deal on cheap vodka, and came back a little after 2 a.m. There wasn't another soul around. We said our goodbyes and went off in exactly opposite directions. I walked for about 20 minutes before realizing I had no idea where I was. I couldn't find my hostel. I was in a dark, quiet, residential neighborhood and figured I'd find my hostel by performing a street-by-street sweep of the grid. I knew I was in roughly the right area. I couldn't be too far off. After 40 or 50 minutes of this, I was despairing. I thought I was going to have to sleep under a bush or on the sidewalk and try to wake up at sunrise so none of these fine suburbanites called the police about the American vagrant sleeping on their lawn. Seriously, when I was just about getting ready to crawl under the shrubs and curl up for a few hours, I came out onto a long thoroughfare. It graded downward, and I figured it must eventually bring me to the street the train station was on. At least from there I could start the search anew. Way down at the bottom of the hill, in the dark shadows, was another man. The first I'd seen since I left my friend. He was wearing a hoodie, and was probably a couple hundred yards away. We were striding toward one another. I stiffened, and readied myself to cross his path. I figured another person out this late at night by himself must be up to no good. I thought I was in for a strong-arm robbery by a Scottish thug. The anticipation was killing me as we got closer and closer, until 20 feet away I realized it was my friend. We were shocked and amazed. He'd been readying himself for a mugging as well. We laughed and wondered how it was possible that I was a couple hundred yards up the hill from him when he'd set out straight for his house. I told him that we'd parted company almost an hour ago, and he said no, that he'd just came up from the train station. He thought I'd sprinted up to the top of the hill after we departed, so I could come down the street and mess with him. What? This one still boggles my mind, and I have no way to explain it. Story 12. I'm not sure if this is a glitch, but if someone could maybe help me understand, I would appreciate it. My friend was coming to pick me up, and we were going to take a long drive to go see another friend. I had asked my parents to watch my son, and while I was getting ready I had this unsettling feeling that if I went I was not going to see my son again, that something bad was going to happen to me. I kinda just brushed it off. My friend told me she was almost to my house. I hung up and something yelled at me loud, "Do not take that long drive." It literally freaked me out. I never felt anything like that before. So now I'm getting in my friend's car, and I'm thinking, how am I going to tell her we can't go? Well, as soon as I get in, she starts to tell me, I don't think we should go. Something was telling me, if we go something bad will happen to us. I told her I was going to tell you the same thing, and told her what was happening to me while I was getting ready. So we just ended up going to Winn-Dixie. It's a store 3 minutes away from my house. She had some groceries she needed to get, and we just got something to eat for dinner before she brought me back home. Now it's dark outside, and we pull up to my house. As I'm about to get out, a car pulls up in front of us. I just thought it was somebody going to my neighbor's house. As I'm walking to my door, my friend calls me and asks, "Is that your mom in the car? They keep trying to pull up like they want to get in your driveway." I had knocked on my door waiting for someone to open it, but I went to look in that car, and I was like, that is my mom, and I could see in the car because the middle light was on in the car. I told my friend, "Why is she moving weird?" That something was off, like the way she was moving was different. And then I was like, but that's not her car. Whose car is she in? And then as I'm looking at my mom in the car, my mom opens the door for me to come inside, and I tell my friend, "Wait, that's not my mom just opened the door." At this time I didn't know what to think, and I go inside the house. My friend leaves. Now I go back to look at the car outside, and I see a car turn in my neighbor's driveway and back out and leave, but I'm not sure if it was the car my mom was in or someone else. So I don't know for sure where the car went after I came inside, because I was just so confused on what just had happened. This happened like 2 years ago, but I just found out about glitches the other day. Also, I shared the first part of the story to show how the night started out a bit weird. Let me know what you think. Story 13. This is weird, and I honestly think I'm going crazy. Someone please tell me there's a reasonable explanation for this, because I've been thinking about it since it happened, and it's making my head spin. Last night was the England game. I'm not a football fan at all, never have been, but this match was apparently a big deal. Everyone around me was talking about it all week, and by the time kickoff came, the whole neighborhood felt alive with tension. Even though I wasn't watching, I was vaguely interested in the result, mostly just curiosity, like you want to know the ending of a movie everyone's been spoiling online. I was in bed watching Lebanon, the 300th episode of Supernatural. I remember that clearly because it's one of my comfort shows, and I'd been saving that episode for a quiet night. The window above my bed, the skylight, was cracked open, letting in the cool night air. I could hear the faint noise of people in the houses behind mine yelling at the TV. The whole atmosphere was kind of electric, even from my room. At some point, I wanted to know how the match was going, so I picked up my phone. I knew it had just gone to penalties. You could tell from the sounds outside, those tense, collective gasps and cheers. I typed into Google, England v Italy result. And there it was, plain as day. Italy wins 3-2. Right there on the search page. No live updates banner, no in progress or penalty shootout. Just the result, like it was over. I stared at it for a second, confused. Had I missed the end? Did it just finish? It seemed weird, but Google can be a little ahead sometimes, right? I shrugged it off and thought, oh well, Italy won. But when I clicked on live updates, it told a completely different story. The game wasn't finished. It was still happening. Penalties were still going on. Italy hadn't won yet. We weren't talking about a tiny delay or a few seconds of lag. The match was still actively in play. I sat there feeling oddly unsettled. How could I have just seen the result before it happened? It wasn't like a guess or a prediction. It was literally typed out like a completed match score. A moment later, I heard it, shouting from the houses behind mine, the unmistakable noise of frustration and disappointment. England had just lost. Then, from the TV in the next room, I heard the official commentary echo the same thing. Italy had won. I told myself I must have misread it. Maybe it said Italy leading, or Italy ahead, or something like that. Maybe my tired brain filled in the blanks. I tried not to overthink it. That is, until this morning. I was making tea when my daughter came downstairs. Completely out of the blue, she said to me, "Mum, I think there was a glitch in the Matrix last night." I turned and asked her what she meant. She told me she'd been following the match on her own phone and had seen the result ages before it happened. Same scoreline, same wording. Italy wins 3-2, well before the last penalty was even taken. Hearing her say that made my stomach drop. I'd been trying to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I'd been tired or distracted. But now she was describing the exact same experience, seeing the final score written out before it was actually over. And that's why I'm here, writing this down. Because I'm so confused. I'm not the kind of person who jumps to paranormal conclusions. I'm a rational thinker. I don't believe in premonitions or time slips or glitches in the Matrix. But this was strange. It wasn't dramatic, like a scene from a sci-fi movie. It was just a little thing, an odd, quiet moment where reality seemed to run slightly ahead of itself. A small, almost trivial anomaly. But those are the ones that get under your skin, aren't they? I keep replaying it in my mind. The skylight open, the cool air, the faint sound of shouting from other houses. Me sitting in bed with my phone, watching a show about supernatural things while something weird and unexplained happened in real life. My daughter, somewhere else in the house, seeing the same thing at the same time. I don't know what to call it. Coincidence? A glitch? A weird quirk of how Google handles live scores? Whatever it was unsettling. And now I can't stop wondering, if the Matrix did glitch, would it even look like anything bigger than this? Or would it just be little moments like this one, easy to write off but impossible to forget? Story 14. Number 1. When I was a kid in primary school, one of the kids in my group of friends was talking with me about whatever, and then suddenly mentioned or tried to mock me for something that he had no way of knowing. Example, it's like if on Fridays you read a random book Z, and nobody but you knows about it. You never told anyone, not even your closest friend, and you didn't really want or care to tell anyone. And then someone, for a second there, seems to know everything. And it was something really specific, not something anyone could guess. If a kid likes to play video games and then someone randomly says, "Hey, did you finish X game?" It can happen, but when someone doesn't even know about anything you do, and then says something super oddly specific. To this day I have no clue what happened. I remember being paralyzed the moment after, with no idea what to say or think. Number 2. Around 5 times in my life, after going to bed and trying to sleep, not sure if because of being tired or with my mind too active, I have heard some voices. Not creepy ones that tell me to kill someone, no, but voices I think mostly from family members. Can't remember if from someone other than them. Usually 2 or more people talking or monologues, random things that I didn't generate consciously, and they really felt like actual people talking. Basically, I assume it was my subconscious generating all those dialogues, but regardless, they felt too real. Almost like hearing conversations from the future or somewhere else, since I had no memory of any of them. I don't remember any dialogue being hostile in any way. It could be trivial stuff or complex dialogue, can't really tell, since I just don't remember any of it in detail. Those things usually have lasted around 5 to 10 minutes. It really makes you wonder stuff about how much of the world is and can be generated by your brain and what isn't. Because remember, those things happened while I was awake and trying to sleep but couldn't. Last, while writing number 1, my lights kept on flickering and it stopped if I stopped until they finally went out. I thought it was a blackout for a second until I realized my router and lights outside were still on. I know, just a coincidence, but it spooked me a bit, like if the world didn't want me to keep writing. Story 15. My daughter introduced me to the YouTube videos of Scott's comedian, Billy Connolly. We stayed up way too late and laughed ourselves silly one evening watching video after video. A few nights later, we watched some more only to discover he'd died a few years before. This was sad, and I remember regretting that I hadn't appreciated his humor more while he was alive. There was even a YouTube video by Robin Williams, who by that time had passed himself, naming Connolly as one of his inspirations and the funniest guy he'd ever known. About a year later, my daughter came to me with a strange look on her face and said, "Do you remember thinking Billy Connolly is dead?" I stared at her. The way she'd phrased the question was odd. I said, "Yes. We looked it up. He died of cancer." She said, "No, he didn't. He's not dead." I couldn't believe it, because I remembered reading that he'd died. Furthermore, I remembered watching the interview with Robin Williams saying Connolly was the funniest guy he ever knew. How much higher praise can you get than that? So I went to the computer and looked it up for myself. She was right. Connolly was alive. So weird. It was the oddest thing. I still couldn't believe it, so I tried looking for the video we'd watched about Robin Williams' tribute to Connolly. Couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know what happened, but my daughter and I still both remember reading about his death online and watching the Robin Williams tribute to the late, great Billy Connolly, who is still alive. This next story isn't mine, but one I read about. Years ago, I read Dolly Parton's autobiography. She's led a very colorful life as a country superstar. In the book, she told of a glitch she and a close friend experienced. The 2 women were going away for the weekend. No husbands. Just the 2 of them for some girlfriend time. They got in the car, and as Dolly started the car, she noticed the time. The women then drove off and had a fantastic time going to restaurants, making memories, etc. After a wonderful weekend away, they drove back home, pulled into the parking space, shut the car off, and Dolly glanced down at her watch. It was still Friday. Only 1 minute had elapsed on her watch since she'd last glanced at it. They had not yet gone anywhere and still had the weekend ahead of them, although both women still had fresh in mind the memory of everything they had done that weekend. A weekend that had not yet occurred, as it was still Friday afternoon, and they hadn't left yet. In the book, Dolly didn't analyze the experience. Just shared that it had happened. Really weird. Story 16. I pay very close attention to details and have an extremely occurred photographic memory. No detail escapes me. So sometimes I spot a person. Nothing special about him, he just passes in front of me, coming from left to right. We're at a mall or a busy street. I keep walking forward. Moments later, the same exact person passes by, same direction as before. Okay, maybe he is a prankster and ran behind me and passes in front of me again. But this has been happening in my life for a very long time. Way before The Matrix was out, and I would discover the term glitch in the Matrix, so it wasn't interfered by the movie at all. As a kid I would find it funny, then as a teen it would be confusing, and today I mostly don't care anymore. It works with persons, every glitch a different person, to clarify. Otherwise I'd be freaked out since day one. But it also had happened with cars on highways, had one just this morning, landscapes while traveling by car/train, and it's totally different from a déjà vu. I guess that if we live in a simulated reality, then these glitches are real, but most people don't see them for not being so addicted to details as I am. Or they're just weird coincidences? Who will say?